Alright, so this is the video recording of the chair assignment for IGME219, and at the time of this recording, this was the first homework assignment for this class. We provided this chair reference, and this is chair front and chair side. If you take a quick look at this chair, you will notice that the frame or the reference image is not completely symmetrical. The chair itself is symmetrical, but I have no space on this side and some space on here. I can quickly edit this in Photoshop just to make it perfectly symmetrical, and that will be a really great option. But I'm not going to do that because I want to show you some other tools that I will be able to use in Maya, and I want to show you why would I do one or the other. So this is the first step. The next thing is I'm going to be launching Maya. So over here, I'm going to do the first step, which is going to be go to my file project window and then create a new project. This project at the time of this recording was P01a, which is the number of the project, and then my last name and the capital letter of my name. This is the naming convention, like the project number, and then my last name and the first letter of my middle name. I will be add chair at the end, so I know what this is all about, because P01a is really not that informative of what this project is going to be. But at least with the first part, I should be able to download everything from my courses and just have them sorted. This part, underscore chair at the end, is completely optional to you. But the location is going to be desktop. Now you'll see here that all my folders are going to be the default ones, and that is perfectly fine. I'm just gonna hit accept, and then I will show you the new folder that I have over here. Remember that these projects or these folders in Maya don't, if I destroy them, they are gonna be reconstructed. So I'm gonna select source images, scenes, and images. And as soon as Maya use something that goes in the data folder, for instance, it is going to reconstruct that data folder. So I'm going to take this, and inside of scenes and source images, I have the edits folder that I may leave or just remove, and the source images that I can, again, leave or remove. It is just that I like seeing clean folders in here. Since images refer really to files that are going to be coming from the render output of Maya. And for this particular project, we're not going to be rendering anything out, so I'm just going to take it out as well. So I'm going to keep scenes, and I'm going to keep my source images. And this mail script file is, think about it as a Python. It's the mail script is a Maya scripting language. So I'm just going to keep it here, and what I need to do though is take this reference image and copy them to this particular folder. So with that, I'm going to be closing these two. This is the folder as I have it, but that is that. Now I'm going to go to my Maya, and now that I have this project created, I can just easily go to File, Save Scene As, and make sure that you're under the Scenes folder. I'm going to save this as, once again, P01a underscore my last name underscore L, and also I'm going to call this chair. These naming conventions vary from teacher to teacher. This is just the one that I have, and the underscore and the end, L chair at the end is just completely optional. So I'm going to hit save and continue. Now with that, if I move my camera around, I'm basically changing the scene. I'm changing one of the cameras in the world, which is going to be the perspective one. So with a single change in here, I can just go to my file, increment, and save. And that is going to create my file 0001.mb. If I do another incremental save after making some changes, that is going to change the actual number that I have on the top. So it's always a good idea to do these incremental save instead of just overwriting your file, because maybe if you commit a mistake and then just keep on saving over that mistake, there's no way to go back or track back that much. But the incremental save is always going to create one of these files like that. The next thing is I'm going to be creating the reference image, but I'm not going to do it in the perspective view. I'm going to show you what happens if you do. I'm going to go to File, Import or Image Plane, and then Import Image. If I say side, see, it's not really actually centered to the side, and it's just stuck in front of the camera. And even if I move my view, that is not changing the reference. So the actual right place to do that would be either in the front or the side to begin with. So import image plane, and that is going to be my front reference image. Then I'm going to go to the side, and I'm going to go to File, Image Plane, Import Image, and this is going to be the side one. With that, I'm going to go to this view, and you will notice that I have the two of them here. I'm going to create a new layer by selecting the two of them with a marquee selection and then clicking this icon here. That is going to be create a new layer from the objects. And I'm gonna open these and I'm gonna call these the reference underscore layer. The color doesn't really matter, but I'm just gonna use this one. I'm gonna move these to the right of the object, so that way. And I'm going to be moving this one behind that way. The numbers or the position of these don't really matter. You can actually scale the two of them together, or you can just keep them at that size. At this point, we're just modeling the file. The reference itself is going to be important, and we're going to have real measurements once we bring these to a game engine. But for now, modeling it, you can model it in whatever scale is fine for you. What I'm going to do though is I'm going to hide the grid on the perspective view, because most of the time it's really just in my face. The fact that I hide it in the perspective view doesn't mean that it's hidden in the front or the side view. See, I can enable and disable them separately. So that is going to be the very first step in order to create this homework assignment. Alright, after I set up the project, the next thing that I'm going to do is create a basic cube from which I'm going to be modeling everything from this point onwards. The first thing that you will notice is that this cube is, actually I moved this the wrong direction last time, so I'm going to put it behind. But you will notice that this view or this cube is occluding the view behind of it. We haven't really talked about creating materials and stuff related to that in the class, but I always like to do, instead of modifying the default material and making the default material semi-transparent, you can play with the render views that I have here on the top, making something semi-transparent, or just having the profile. But I want to toggle this to use the material creation. So I'm gonna right click on top of my object, and then I'm gonna go to assign a favorite material. This favorite material here is going to be a Lambert, and you will notice in my attribute editor that this object creates a new name at the end. In here I'm just gonna call it m underscore for my naming convention materials something, and this is going to be my modeling material. And I want to make this red because it's contrasting to the actual shape. I didn't assign the color. And then the larger or the more to the right it is, I should say the larger the value, the more to the right it is going to be more transparent, and the left is going to be more opaque. So something in between that let me see the color is going to be quite useful. The next thing that I'm going to do after I create this, and I don't need to worry about the name of the cube right now because this is just the basic creation. I know that in here I'm going to be doing a chair. I don't really want to change the name right now, but that might be a good idea right now, saying sm underscore as static material or static mesh, sorry. And then I'm going to select this. I'm going to press R so I can scale it down, and I'm going to try to eyeball the position of this thing. So I didn't do a terrible job, but after I move this thing in here, the next thing that I want to do is scale it appropriately, and then I'm gonna go to my vertex and I'm gonna move this part out, and I'm just gonna put it here on the top. See, it's just going to be using that part of the cushion. The fact that it's great in this view doesn't mean that it's gonna be great on my side view. See, good here, not so great in here. So I'm gonna move it forward, and again I'm gonna try to eyeball the scale. Okay, most of the time we can get away with eyeballing stuff, but in this case what I want to do is make it really the right appropriate size. So I'm gonna right click and hold, and then I'm gonna go to my vertex mode. I'm gonna do a marquee selection here, making sure that my tool settings have in my W, sorry I need to press Q, my soft selection is off and my camera is off as well. So this is tool settings, this is the icon for accessing those tool settings. So I'm gonna change this to move, and I'm just gonna move it a little bit forward. I don't really care about this curve right now, the same way that I didn't care about the other one in the side. I'm gonna do the same over here. So I'm gonna select these guys and I'm gonna move them back, and I'm gonna select these guys and I'm gonna move them back. I have an issue though, and the main issue really is that the pivot point is no longer centered to the origin. See, if I select the object, it is not really here in this cross, and that is going to be conflicting to me down the road. So something that I want to do is modify the pivot point. In order to do so, I'll need to hold the D key as in day and the X key as in Xavier. So I'm going to move it down, and I'm just going to move it to the side and back in. The fact that I modified in one view doesn't mean that I modified in all of them. So I'm going to say dx once again, and I'm just going to position it in here. That is going to be really important down the road because this thing is going to be where my rotations are going to happen. See, now based on my camera, this is rotating over here. If I move the pivot point out of the way for a second, see, this is where it's rotating. And not only that, when I try to mirror my geometry, it's going to mirror it from the pivot point to the other side. So this is fine for now. I'm going to change my selection, and then I'm going to go to my mesh tools, and I'm going to say insert edge loop, but I'm going to click on the square. That is going to take me directly to the tool settings. On if you don't have this enabled or showing, this is going to create a pop-up window. Just make sure that it is either attached here or you see where it is happening. If I say relative distance from edge, that is going to let me just cut whatever I want. But if I say use multiple edge loops, and I say now equal distance or equal multiplier 1, that is always going to center it. So I'm going to put one in here, and I'm going to put another one in here. So with these two cuts, that is going to go all the way around my shape, and I can see that being useful. Now the next thing that I'm going to do is press Q, and I'm going to double click this thing, and I will scale it up. So I'm going to say scale this one a little bit, double click this one, and from the center, this is where I'm modifying this. I'm doing it from the center. It is going to be doing that part for me. That is so I can have some sort of roundness shape to this cushion. It's not completely like a square shape. Okay. Now my next step in here is going to be add a cut right at the center of the object. I want to make sure that it's completely centered. So what I'm going to do now is do the same cut, edit mesh, and then do a mesh tool, sorry, and say insert edge loop, and then I'm gonna click here. If I zoom in, you will notice that it's not perfectly centered, and that's why I like this reference image here, because I can just use that as a base or a reference. I'm gonna change my selection to faces, and I'm gonna leave half the face. This part is mirroring my geometry, so I'm gonna go to my duplicate spatial and options. I'm gonna reset my settings, and I'm gonna make sure that I have an instance, and the scale in the X component is going to be -1. Duplicate spatial, and if I zoom in, do you see this gray area or this other area? That is because this whole thing wasn't completely centered at the pivot point, or in this case at the edge of the world. So with the model in half, I'm gonna right click and say vertex. I'm gonna select the two of them using the same snap to grid. Either I select this option and I move it out, or let's say that I have it over here. I'm gonna hold the X key, which is the circuit for that, and then just move it, snap it in here. That is useful because now when I do my duplicate special options or Control-Shift-D, my object is completely mirrored right by the center. See, I'm clicking one on the other, PQ1, PQ2, and they're right at that position. So that is the next step that I wanted to start working with. Working with instances is important because as soon as I start modifying something, let's take this face for instance and start making it out, it is going to do it on the other side. And as you can see, these faces aren't attached to each other. They are just like at the same position, but they're not sharing any vertex. So I'm gonna take it back. And the next step is going to be actually creating the legs of the chair. So for this step, I'm going to go to my mesh tools, insert edge loop options, and this time around, I'm gonna make sure that I'm using the first option, relative distance to the edge. That is going to let me choose where I wanna do my cuts. So I'm gonna kind of eyeball it, and I'm gonna be using all the right side of the image as a reference. This is going to be actually the left side of the chair, but the right side of the image. And I'm gonna let it go here. Do you see that? Over here, if I zoom in onto what I did, see the left side, well, actually the right side of the chair, the left side from my viewer's perspective, have the same image or the same cuts that I did on this side. Now I'm gonna go to the side, I'm gonna make another cut over here and another cut over here. That is just going to be extracting the geometry out of this chair. So that works perfectly for me, and I'm going to select this face and this face. All right. Notice that every single time that I do something onto my shape, history gets appended. And at some point, I want to clear that history. But for now, let's just keep on working with this. And the next thing that I want to do is extrude this information. I'm in the modeling toolkit. extrude. I have many different places that I can go for. This is the extrude tool over here. I have the same tool over here. I can go to my edit mesh extrude, or better yet, I'm gonna do only the Control E for extrusion. So that way I can move them down, and that is how I'm making the legs. In order to avoid working a lot, I'm just going to move them down so I can place them in a location that makes sense, like this base here. And now I will try to fit this profile as much as I can. I'm gonna right click this and I'm gonna say change this to face selection, and I'm gonna select all of these faces and then Control deselect this. The reason I'm doing that is that from the perspective view, I am not able to just select this face. So yeah, I can go always to the perspective view and just select it and then go back in here, but no, I cannot do that directly here. And actually I'm trying to save some time, so face select all of these faces, Control deselect the ones on the top. That is going to let me only with the one down there selected, and I'm gonna move it back. Okay, I'm gonna move it forward, sorry, in this direction. I'm gonna align it to the back part, and I'm going to do the same for this one. I'm gonna decontrol or deselect these guys, and I'm gonna move this one back. Now the leg has different thickness than the actual cut that I did on the top. So I'm gonna change this to vertex, and I'm gonna select this front part, and I'm going to move it backwards. This is not totally aligned with this cut that I have over here, but we're gonna be fixing that in a minute. I'm gonna do the same thing for this side, and I'm gonna take the front reference as to check the actual thickness on this thing. Notice that this part is totally not aligned like in my front. So I'm gonna select this, and from this view, now I'm selecting both 4 faces of the front and 4 faces on the back. I'm gonna deselect these guys, and I'm gonna move them backwards like that. Then I'm gonna change my vertex selection, and I'm going to move the leg backwards. Okay, I don't have enough cuts in here that fit the profile that I have. So in this case, what I want to do is do another edge loop and just make sure that it's sort of aligned to this view, because this is where I'm actually seeing the piece of wood that goes between the 2 legs. From the front one, I don't have it, but from the side, I do have it. So adding these 2 cuts is going to be important. They are going to be here, and let's go to the front view. Let's go and select all the vertices. So vertex, select all of them and move them this way. Then I'm going to select only these guys here, and I'm just going to make sure that I'm using the same thickness for the legs in this area. All right, now that I have it like that, I'm going to do the same for this view. That is not going to be affecting this one because I'm working in a different dimension, and this is going to get pulled back just a little bit. I'm going to do the same for these legs here and here, and then I'm gonna do another cut. So mesh tools, insert edge loop, and insert one in here and one in here. I'm going to change this selection to vertex, so here, and then I'm gonna be pulling these forward a little bit, and these seem to have a little bit more thickness onto it, so I'm just gonna move it here, and I'm gonna do the same for this one. I'm gonna be moving it like so. Okay, I'm gonna check my front view, and I can see that they are not entirely aligned, so I'm just gonna move them over here really quickly. This doesn't need to be perfect, especially because the thickness of this line is way larger than just the point that I have over here. The lines are not entirely the same size, but this is just a reference image. Okay, so my next step is going to see where this thing is getting a cut. This is going to be a little troublesome at some point, because I need to follow this cut. I'm going to go to my mesh tools, insert edge, and do the same over here, and more or less I'm going to try to eyeball where the vent is going in this way. So as soon as I do that, you will see that they are no longer aligning here. That's perfectly fine. I can just do my vertex and try to align them the best that I can. But they are different in the back view. So I'm just gonna select these guys, gonna move them back, and that seems okay for me. I don't wanna add a lot of detail on my chair because that is just gonna increment my poly count. This poly count, by the way, you access by saying display, heads up display, and then going to my poly count. That is going to enable or disable this view. Okay, to repeat an action, by the way, you just need to press G, the G key, G as in global. Now with that, I have the very first step of my chair. I can see it on my perspective view, and yeah, that looks pretty well. So the next step in here is going to be make this piece of wood. So for that purpose, I will go and take a look at what are the cuts that I have. See, I have these cuts in here and these cuts in here. I just really need the piece of wood that goes in between the two of them. So that is the thing that I'm going to be doing in the next step. So the next step here is going to be creating that piece of wood, as I said earlier. And another thing that I should say is that Maya has many different ways of creating, or there are many different ways of recreating the same steps. So what I'm going to be doing here is showing you two different ways of creating this shape. So I'm going to go to my side view here, and I'm going to say select these faces, and then deselect the ones here and the ones here. That is going to be basically just like selecting this face and this face. Okay, then I'm gonna do Control E, and I'm gonna be pushing them forward. See how they are growing one back and one to the other side? All right, so this is just creating that geometry. Then I'm gonna say face selection once again. I'm gonna select the two of them, and I'm gonna select the two. What I have with that is that the two interfaces selected. I know that I have done that a lot of times in this video, but I'm just going to be deselecting the two of them. All right. The next thing that I'm going to show you is going to be saying, I'm going to select this vertex, and I'm going to hold V as in Victor while I have my move selection tool, and see that is going to let me snap these to this particular vertex that I'm saying, snap to it. That is fine because there's a connection between the two of them, but if I was to select this face, see, notice how they are not really just connected. So snapping onto the vertex is fine, but what I'm gonna try to do here is going to say, I'm gonna select this vertex, and I will just go to my mesh tools, target weld. So target weld is going to be an option that lets me basically just say, you know what, connect this vertex to this thing. See how the icon change and everything is just moving it in there. And let's do the same for this one on the top. Now if I change my selection of faces and move it, see how it's actually moving the two of them. It's just mirroring the two. I'm going to do I'll show you another tool here that is going to be my vertex. I'm going to say vertex, and I'm going to do the same thing that I did before. This is snapping onto a vertex. I'm going to snap it here, and then snapping over here. Once again, the face underneath is not connected, but the face on the top is connected. Okay, that is because over here I only have one vertex. If I was to say select this vertex, I will see, well, I see the one here and the one here. Remember, this is mirror geometry, so that's why I see a number 2 on the top. But if I was to select these here, see the number change to 4 because I have one for this face, one for this face, and then the 2 on the other side. So another thing that I can do here is just say object mode, and then go to my mesh tools, edit mesh, and merge. It is under edit mesh, so merge them. Now that I have that, if I select this face here and move that, oops, that didn't actually quite do it this time. What is that? Why is that? So I have selection on these two, mesh, merge, then select the face. Maybe my threshold is too small. I'm gonna take a quick look at that. So edit mesh, merge, options. Yeah, see, the threshold was really just not the default one. So I need to go to edit and say reset settings, merge. Now that I have it like that, the file should, or the face should move together. Do you see that? Okay, it's always important to check what are the properties of your tools, and most of the time I'm going to be working with the default ones, but for some projects I might want to change those things. I can easily edit this video and show you that I model perfectly and I make no mistakes, but that isn't really my way of showing you. I make errors myself, even though I have been modeling for years now. So it's always important to show you these little details, like hide the or make sure that you reset the settings of a particular tool or something of the sort. All right, now that I have these faces connected and I made my spiel about why I'm not going to be editing this video, another thing that I want to do is double click this edge and now this time say Control Delete, and that is going to make my line completely straight. Do you see that? That deleted the geometry. It is not the same as saying delete. Delete is going to delete the face or the edge, but it's not gonna get rid of these vertices. And that is awful because right now I have one edge here and one edge here, and they are going to be separated by these vertex, which are known as floating vertex. And that is something you don't want to have in your models, especially because that is going to pretty much lead to n-gons most of the time. Do you see that? This is a face that has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 sides. So I'm going to undo that deletion. So I'm going to select it and Control Delete it. You see that? Great. That actually follows the profile pretty well. But I said that I was going to be showing you how Maya lets you do stuff in many different ways. So I'm going to select these faces now, and I'm going to fill the holes that I have over here. In my modeling toolkit, I should have I don't see the option here. I don't feel like searching for it, but I'm gonna go to my mesh tools, append to polygon. I feel that it should be in this menu, but I don't see it over here, so it doesn't really matter. Append to polygon is going to let me append a polygon onto a particular point that I have. So that is just reconstructing the shape that I have earlier. Do you see that? I have an issue with the shading, just because of the way the normals work for this. But the important part is that I have the shape that I had before. The geometry here is the same, even though the normals are not. Maybe I can just select these faces because they kind of look ugly, and let's see if that fixes it. I'm gonna go to my mesh display and I'm gonna say harden edge. Yeah, that got rid of the rendering issue. But this is basically what I had before I did the other one. This is a really easy tool to work with. This is going to be select this face and now select this face. And what I want to do is click on bridge, right? So all of the steps that I did before in like a couple of minutes, just a single click, and that worked there. Bridge is a great tool, but it might not be the best tool to apply to every single case or scenario. So that's why I show you the other ones. Actually, I show you like 4 different tools to make what a bridge would do in this particular case. It's important to notice that this is only going to work in this particular case. So I've been working in this file for a while and I actually haven't saved anything. This is a great time and a great opportunity to say file, increment my save. So file, increment save. Then this is actually saying me, right, that I'm working on file number 2. Remember that it's always a good idea to say, if you are doubting this is the right time to save, I did some changes in Maya, yeah, it's always a good idea to just do an incremental save. So these two pieces are completely disconnected, this one from this one, but everything that happens to one side is going to be affecting the other one. The only real part that I'm missing here is the back part of the chair, and the back part of the chair is really easy to do with this particular face that I have here. So I'm gonna say select this face, and I'm gonna do a Control E, and I'm gonna be pulling this up. This is actually a great chance as well to show you this other interface that I have over here. Do you see this face that I'm creating? That is because I'm making, let me select this object and delete it. This is going to lead to issues down the road. Do you see this face? That is going to be bad practice. If you leave this face inside of it, or we're going to be checking that in another set of lectures. If I go mesh combine, and then I try to smooth this shape like pressing 3, the faces are connected here instead of doing one single round part on the top. So yeah, that's an issue, that's an error. I'll press 1 so I go back to the regular view, and I'm not going to extrude it just yet. Actually, just to make sure that everything is in the right place, I'm gonna open my chair 2, and that should not have any issues. So how do I work with that? How do I make that mirrored symmetry in there? Well, what I'm going to do right now is just gonna do the same thing that I did before. Control E and move it up. Okay. Now that I have it like that, just the basic profile, I'm gonna go to the front and see how tall I need this shape. and it is going to be as tall as the chair to begin with. So it's going to be here. I still have information right at the center, even though I can see it from the front. So how would I select those faces and delete them? That's as easy as saying do a marquee selection here and then deselect the faces on this side. That is going to leave to these faces selected, and can just hit delete, and that is going to delete the inner faces. Now I don't have that extra geometry that I had that was just in my way. So this is completely aligned to this part. What I want to do is make this thing a little larger. So I'm going to go to my object mode. I'm going to select this. I'm going to say mesh, insert edge loop, and I'm going to insert one edge right where the cut is going to be. Okay, so right in here. I will use this as I'm going to select the faces here. I'm going to deselect these faces, and I'm going to move these to this side. Do you see how this is getting more close to the shape, but not entirely because of this cut? The other way that I could have done it is just move the particular vertices to the right side, but see, this chair doesn't completely follow the profile of the reference image that I have in the background. So the next step for me would be go to this front view and now do an insert edge by saying mesh, tools, insert edge loop, and this is where my stuff start getting modified. Okay, I need to do a cut in here that is going to let me move the face that I have on the side. So let's select these two and then move it in a little bit. Actually, I'm gonna do it with the vertices. It's going to be a little cleaner that way. Gonna move it here, and do you see how this is not completely aligned? I can just go over here and say, hey, move just this edge to the right position. So move it more or less over here. There you go. Notice how it doesn't match the two sides. That's perfectly fine. The only way it would match the two of those sides would be making a perfectly even image or reference image. So this seems fine. Maybe I want to give it a little roundness here, so I'm just move it backwards, just a little bit backwards, and then I'm gonna say mesh tools, insert edge loop, and make another loop here. Remember that the loop tool right now is going to be relative distance from edge. Then I will select or deselect these ones. So I'm going to work with only this one, and I'm going to pull it forward. See, it has a little more indentation in it. Depending on the resolution that you're going for in your model, you may not want to have this extra face in here just to make it rounder. But for the sake of this exercise, as I don't really have a poly count limit, so long as less than 1,000 faces or 1,000 triangles, I should say, it should be fine. Then the next step is going to be press G, so repeat the last action to put it right at the center. And then I'm going to move it. I'm going to deselect these ones first, and then I'm going to pull it in. I'm going to try to make it a little bit rounder. So over here, repeat these, make another cut. This is at this point, it is just me trying to make it prettier, but it doesn't really affect how much this is going to be round, or actually the render calls, I should say. I'm gonna go to my edge selection, deselect these. This is by holding control once again, and then moving these backwards. So this is rounder, and this match my description perfectly. Now I should check these from the side, and I will notice that this is not completely aligned with this part. And also this thing just lets me know that the chair is not completely flat. There's some sort of cushion going on in here. That is outside of the requirement for this assignment. That will require me to do another cut. So I'm just gonna do the basic, and then at the end, I'm just gonna select this one. I'm gonna pull it back. Actually, I should select the whole thing here, this marquee, so everything moves alongside with that. So I'm gonna do the basic homework assignment first before I attempt to do anything else, and then I'm gonna move forward. Why isn't this coming forward with me? Oh, because of this point. Okay, so I'm gonna be modifying them by vertices. That's gonna be better. So vertex, move them back. This vertex, move them back. these vertices get moved back, select this vertex, pull it back, and you get the idea here. This is just me trying to make it look more like the profile. And here, and here, and then maybe this one a little bit further back, and then maybe this one a little bit further back. So that is basically what my chair looks like if I follow the profile. I don't want to move them down just yet. I want to have it aligned. Beautiful. So long you are following the tutorial, this is basically what the chair is going to look like. It doesn't have this cushion face up in here. So the next step that I'm going to do is make it just like that. You can skip that part if you want to. This is not going to be a requirement. I don't want you, or I don't need you to make a cushion for this front part, but I better just try to do it in this section. What is important here is what is going to follow that part, which is going to be mirror the geometry in the right way, because this is an instance I want to have a copy. So the next thing that I'm going to do here is going to do an insert loop, so mesh tools, but this time around, once again, I need to enable this to have a particular percentage on how close this is going to be. So this time I want to have this at, let's say, 2/10 of the last of next to this area, so it's going to be 80% all the way in. And in order to do that, I will just do 10 cuts. So instead of one, I'm going to be doing 10 cuts, and I'm going to do them here. See how much resolution I increased in here? Well, the next step is going to go to my selection and double click this loop. See how it goes all the way around? I'm going to say Control Delete, so I get rid of the vertices. This one I'm going to leave. I'm going to select this one, Shift select this one, this one, this one, this one, this one, this one, and this one, and Control Delete that. That way, these faces are going to be just extruded the right way. Okay, so it's actually even. And before I forget about that tool, I'm going to go to my Insert Edge Loop options, and I'm just going to reset the tool. So it's as I need it next time, so I don't have any issues. I'm going to select my edge, and I'm going to Control select up to here. And now I'm going to go to my side view to see where these references are supposed to be. So this is going to be a little bit further back. I'm going to change my selection to vertices. So select this part, and I'm going to push it backwards. I'm going to do the same here, and I'm going to do the same for this one, and I'm going to do the same for this one, and this one just a little bit back. Okay, this seems a little pointy, so I'm just going to try to make it more smooth, and that's it. I think that's actually it for this chair. It is rounder in this sense. It is following the profile a little better, but this is more like eyeballing this side here because my reference image doesn't contain that information. Okay, so my next and final step is going to be merging the two geometries. Now, sometimes when you do an instance, it is going to create some issues for you. What I'm going to do is, instead of using that instance, I'm going to leave half of the chair, and I'm going to go to my Edit, Duplicate, Special, and this time, instead of an instance, I'm going to create a copy using the same -1 on the scale. And now there is a copy, it shouldn't really have a lot of conflict. So I'm going to select the two of them. I'm going to go to my mesh, and then I'm going to combine the two shapes. Now if I do something to one side, it's going to be affecting the two of them. The next step here is like select one of these faces and then see how it's breaking. It is not actually connected. I'm going to do the same thing that I do for this horizontal piece of wood, and I will say mesh, edit mesh, and then say merge. Okay, the threshold is going to be 0.01, and now if I select one of the faces, that should affect the other one as well. Perfect. My poly count for this object is 228 faces, and those are squares, so that's why it's getting doubled as triangles. And yeah, that is basically my chair now. Now that I have it like this, remember what you need to do for cleaning up the homework assignment, and that is going to be selecting this guy and then saying modify freeze transformations. There's no information on the transforms here, that's good, but nevertheless I should just clear or freeze my transformations. The input is going to be I need to modify that. So that is going to be edit, delete by type, and then history, or Alt-Shift-D. That is my shortcut for doing that. And then everything in here is gone out of the way. Now the naming convention for this semester is going to be SM as static mesh, SM as static mesh, underscore, and this is going to be a chair. So I'm just gonna call it chair. The shape itself is gonna be called chair shape. That is usually the name of the object, and then just attach the name at the end. That part doesn't really matter that much, but you can change it if you want to be the same as M chair. The next thing that I need to do is reset the material that I have for this thing onto a Lambert one, from the modeling material to a Lambert one. And for now, I'm going to leave it like this. There's a lot of work that I need to do, like cleaning up the normals to make it look less square, less faceted. I'm gonna show you really quick what I mean with that. If I go to my mesh display and I say harden edge, then everything is faceted. Do you see those things? If I select the object and say smooth or mesh display soften edge instead of harden edge, then the legs looks pretty weird because it's gonna try to make it round. So I'm just gonna leave it as I had it before, and this is totally acceptable for the homework assignment. This is basically just the chair that I did. Another thing that I can try to make is see how the cushion is a little rounder and here is completely flat. Maybe add a horizontal cut in here and just make it a little rounder. And actually, that's not a terrible idea for a really quick example. So I'm just gonna do that. I'm gonna go to my mesh tools, insert edge loop options, make sure that I'm in the multiple edge options one, so only one of them, and then make a cut, horizontal cut in here. That is gonna increment my geometry and my poly count. So that is depending on the asset that you're making acceptable or not. In this case, I'm really well below the number of triangles that I should ideally have. So long you have less than 500 triangles, let's say, you should be totally fine. And I'm gonna move it up a little bit. I'm gonna select this one and this one. I'm gonna move it up a little bit to select this one and this one. And once again, I'm gonna move it, up a little bit. And I'm gonna do the same for the vertices. So I'm gonna select these two vertices and I'm gonna move them up. I'm gonna select these two vertices and these two vertices. I'm gonna move it up a little bit, not too much, so it's not in the way of the cushion. And I'm gonna select these two here and these two here, and I'm gonna move them up just a little bit. So that looks a little bit rounder, and that's a way of doing it. The other one is I can just deselect everything that I did, or undo everything that I did. Instead of pulling that in, I can use another tool that is just selecting this vertex here, and then making sure that I'm like my selection mode. I am soft selecting stuff, W, so my soft selection is enabled. And do you see how it's affecting everything? That's because the area of influence is really large. So I'm gonna say 1, and that should just make this part of the chair move up, and that looks a little rounder. But that is actually eyeballing the whole thing. So at this point, it's just me trying to make it a little prettier, but this is totally optional, the same way that I did the cushion in the foreground. Can try to make it a little rounder from here as well. So that is basically it for this assignment. Every single cut that I did is increasing these things, so I'm just gonna hit Ctrl Alt T, or going to my edit, delete by type, history. And the last thing that I need to do is save these things. So I'm gonna go to my file, save scene as, actually just do an increment save, sorry. So file, increment save, and continue. Okay. The last thing that I'm going to do for this homework is going to be showing you how am I expecting you to submit these. And this again varies from teacher to teacher and semester to semester. In this semester, the only thing that I need is this very last one. Okay, this is the only thing you need to submit. You don't need to compress it. You don't need to do anything. I will just make a copy and put it on my desktop. This is the only thing that I need to submit to the Dropbox. Okay, this is the only file that I'm expecting from you guys. The size of this file is less than 100 kilobytes. This is homework assignment number 1 in a nutshell. So I hope that you get something out of this. This is a lot of detail going on, but this is basically the solution of the first homework assignment, at least at this point. Again, it can change vary semester from semester, but that is basically what I have for you. So see you guys later.